So good morning, everyone from Hong Kong.
Yeah, and good evening, everyone from here in Toronto. This is the fourth in our series of interviews with portfolio companies. It's great to have Ethan Buchman with us today. Ethan is the co-founder of Cosmos and the CEO of Informal Systems, which is a company that does R&D for the Cosmos network. Cosmos itself is one of the leading blockchain ecosystems, and it's one that we've been investing in actually since the original ICO back in 2017.
Good for you guys.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you. Good to see you here, Ethan, and thank you for taking the time to introduce Cosmos to our LPs and investors. At the end, it's their capital also behind CMCC Global, right? That was supporting in the early days. In fact, we have been one of the 10 largest investors in the ICO back in early 2017. We have been pretty silent about that, but it's going to be. It was a good investment for us so far. And but let's jump right into it. Can you give us a 2-minute elevator type pitch of introduction and just to dive right into it?
Into what is Cosmos?
Exactly. Yeah. Sure. Just a 2-minute elevator pitch to start with.
Yeah. So Cosmos is an Internet of Blockchains project. The goal of Cosmos is to make it as easy as possible for any community, any group of people who want to build a decentralized application to do so and to launch their own blockchain to do so. So, you know, Cosmos came at a time, you know, we imagined it back in 2016. That's when the initial white paper was written, long before there was DeFi, long before there was this proliferation of blockchains. And we saw at the time, you know, Ethereum was already, everyone foresaw scaling issues. We're seeing today huge gas prices. There were issues building applications, right? I mean, Solidity is still not the best developer playground. It's difficult to know things are correct. And so what we wanted to do was to use existing tools, existing programming languages, mature languages supported by industry. We wanted to use existing algorithms or variations on them with decades of academic research into their correctness. And we wanted to bring that to the blockchain industry to basically make it more mature, essentially, right? To have a more mature software development stack, deployment stack for people to build their own blockchains. And, you know, we were one of the pioneers of the proof of stake model. We were one of the first delegated proof of stake systems out there. And, you know, that's really what a lot of the last 5 years has been. So today, it's now at the point that there are, you know, a dozen or so, if not more, mainnet blockchains built using the Cosmos technology with a total market cap of something like $17 billion. The main blockchain that sort of goes with the Cosmos namesake, we call it the Cosmos Hub. It has the Atom token associated with it. And that's just one of many Cosmos blockchains. And the idea is that there will be this huge proliferation of blockchains and that Cosmos prioritizes these values of sovereignty and interoperability, right? It's the idea that anyone can create a blockchain, that it's theirs, that it belongs to their community. They don't have to, you know, give in to gas prices on Ethereum or some set of miners they don't know anything about. And despite that sovereignty, they can still interoperate with one another. And the goal of the Cosmos Hub is to actually facilitate interoperability between all the many different blockchains that will emerge.
Okay, perfect. That was a good introduction. So let's dive right into the team. There are numerous companies and teams working and contributing to the code base of Cosmos. Yeah. Can you give us a bit of for example, Interchain Foundation, Tendermint, Information Systems, all highly reputable teams. Can you give us a little bit more about, first to start with your own background, but then also about kind of the core developers and the companies that are contributing here to the code base?
Yeah, there's a lot of history here. So, you know, my background initially was in biophysics. That's what I studied in university. You know, I was interested in the problem of the origin of life, how it's possible in a universe that's allegedly always running down, according to the second law of thermodynamics, how do these amazing systems, living systems, organisms run up, so to speak, right? And when I encountered Bitcoin sometime in 2013, that's when I first grokked it. It sort of seemed to me like this was an example of what I was studying in the biophysical medium happening in the digital medium, right? The origin of life in digital technology. And so I was infatuated by the Bitcoin organism. And so I went, you know, very deep, went all in basically in Bitcoin at that point, you know, brushed up on my programming skills, ended up doing a master's in computer science. And in my master's, I focused on a new consensus algorithm called Tendermint that was initially invented by Jay Kwan in 2014. I had started working with Jay in early 2015. At the time, I was working for another company They were known as Eris Industries. Now they're called Monax. And we were one of the first companies to try to bring Ethereum as a software stack to enterprises, right? So we were like, oh, it was founded by lawyers. It was like, oh, this amazing smart contract technology. This is going to change the world of business. We're going to bring it to enterprise. But we knew that the proof of work consensus wasn't going to fly, right? We needed something better, something faster, more energy efficient, and so on. And so we were looking for what the best alternative was. We found Jay Kwan and Tendermint. And so I started working very closely with Jay on integrating the Ethereum virtual machine and the Tendermint consensus algorithm so that we could bring that as a product to enterprises. And I fell so in love with Tendermint, with consensus algorithms, that I started a master's degree, and I ended up doing my master's on the Tendermint consensus. And on the work we had done on it together, we sort of evolved it quite considerably and turned it into really a platform for building general purpose blockchain applications, right? And this was in 2015, 2016, I published my master's. It's called Byzantine Fault Tolerant in the Age of Blockchains. You can find it online. It has a very great introduction to proof of stake in the history of academic consensus, if that's something you're interested in. And in early 2016, Jay and I, we had started a company together, Tendermint Inc., essentially. And we were trying to raise money from venture capitalists to build some kind of proof of stake, application hosting platform. And this was a time where people were just starting to get their head around Bitcoin. So they had no idea what we were talking about, right? We're talking about proof of stake and, all this consensus stuff. And so that didn't work, right? And so around April, shortly after I published the thesis and, we were like, what should we do here? We sort of abandoned the venture capital route and said, let's get back to basics. Let's go back to why we're in this in the first place, which is to transform finance, to build public currency systems that are more accessible to the world, that are more democratic, and so on. And so we looked around, we were, big fans of Ethereum and all that. And we thought, we can do something here. And that's sort of where Cosmos was born. This idea that we could make blockchains more scalable, more secure, easier to build on, using proof of stake, using the foundation of Tendermint. Yeah.
So some VCs still sneaked into the investment round for the ICO later on, I guess.
They definitely, a year later, they had figured things out. All right, let's say that. Definitely, and there were some in 2016 that were ahead of their time, and that we're in touch always, and that helped us get some funding in the summer of 2016. And so at that time, it was really just me and Jay. We had brought on a designer. His name is Peng. And we'll get back to him because he's actually now the CEO of Tendermint Inc., so he's playing a big role. So he was working on sort of a front end for what we were building in the background. And that summer and that fall, we basically went on tour. We had published the white paper for Cosmos and decided we were going to do a public fundraiser and started going around promoting what we were building and our technology. We won an award at the DevCon, the Ethereum DevCon that year. In Shanghai for like the most innovative, scalability project and so on. So started to raise a lot of awareness. People were excited about what we were doing. But we wanted to set up a nonprofit foundation to actually carry out the fundraiser, right? So Tendermint Inc. was a US company. And so we went to Switzerland, sort of followed the footsteps of Ethereum. They had laid the groundwork. And we set up the nonprofit, the Interchain Foundation in Switzerland. And that was the vehicle through which we conducted this fundraiser to raise money to promote and do research and development for the Cosmos network, right? And so over time, as we built up, most of the development team in the early days was focused in the Tendermint Inc. company. The Interchain Foundation was funding that, and it was funding some other research, some other development in the space. And over time, sometime around 2019, just before launch, we started trying to more actively build up the Interchain Foundation's team, right? So me and a few other people from Tendermint Inc. went over to the Interchain Foundation. We started hiring researchers, started hiring a more independent team there, and working closely with Tendermint and building up the grant program so that we could fund more projects. And over time, a number of people actually ended up, late last year, late 2019, early 2020, also ended up leaving All in Bits for various reasons. And sort of split up into a whole bunch of companies. And so there's a little bit of like a supernova event in Cosmos. So a bunch of the engineers actually moved to a new company in Berlin. That's a subsidiary of the foundation called Interchain Berlin. And they're still focused on the Tendermint core product and on IBC and on other aspects. And we spun out a company from the Interchain Foundation, and that's Informal Systems. We can talk about the genesis of that and what we're doing with Informal. A few others sort of worked on their own validator projects and working together on development teams. So there's Occlusion, There's the Regen network, which took over the Cosmos SDK. So we basically, really pushed to spread out development into many different entities to really decentralize the ecosystem so that there's no one or even couple of entities that are sort of the core. There's like at least 7 of us, if not more. And now we're bringing on, there's some companies in Asia as well, in Hong Kong and in China and in Korea that are starting to play key roles in the ecosystem as well. So we're really excited about the level of decentralization that we've actually achieved. Yeah.
And does it work well, the level of decentralization, to coordinate the team? And
it's a challenge. I mean, it has pros and cons. Like, it's exciting. It feels like we're really innovating on corporate governance, on open source software development. It feels like we're doing something unique. But it's challenging to coordinate across so many players. And it's getting better. It takes time to sort of build up processes, multi-organizational processes, but we're all very committed. We're in this for the long haul, and we're working together, I think, quite well, actually. Still trying to understand who's responsible for what. There's sort of a lot of overlap still, which is good, but redundancy is helpful, right? I mean, that's how the natural world and ecosystems are so resilient, is a little bit of redundancy, right? So we have that too, which is helpful. And there's no single source of command, which can make it confusing for people coming into the ecosystem, right? You see a lot of these other blockchain ecosystems. There's like the Ethereum Foundation, and that's who you talk to, or the whatever. There's usually a much simpler organizational structure where it's like, here you don't necessarily know where to go. You can go to the Interchain Foundation; they'll be able to write you to the right place. But you might have to talk to a few other companies to sort of find what you're looking for. And so, yeah, there's pros and cons.
In a way, a more decentralized team is also more resilient, right?
Exactly.
I think it's kind of fitting that you have such a decentralized organizational structure when we think about the architecture of Cosmos itself, which is also about having multiple different zones and hubs. Yeah. So maybe actually we can get a little bit into the technology, and bear in mind that our investors will not be as technically savvy as you are, but so maybe just to give a little primer there, to set the scene. So Cosmos, as Ethan said, is not a single blockchain. It's this internet of blockchains. There are many connected blockchains that are either hubs or zones. So Ethan, maybe can you give us kind of a high level overview of that architecture, and then maybe more importantly the rationale behind it?
Yeah. So Cosmos sort of pioneered this notion of application-specific blockchains, right? So Ethereum, let's start with Bitcoin. Bitcoin was sort of a very simple application. It's a currency, right? It's a little bit programmable. You can do multi-sig, you can do some time locks, but it's pretty simple. It's a currency, it's money, people get that, right? Ethereum came along and said, look, we're gonna be the world computer. We're gonna build not just a currency, we're gonna build a whole damn computer that you can write programs for, arbitrary programs that can do anything. And anyone can upload any program at all, and they'll all run on the same platform, and they can all talk to each other, and it's going to be beautiful. And that was revolutionary, right? That blew people's minds. A lot of people were upset by it. They were like, no, that's never going to work. A lot of Ethereum haters, but it worked. It worked very well. But there's a number of issues with that, right? And we see them right now. Because these are all running on the same system, the people that develop the smart contracts have actually no control over the infrastructure, right? There's this separation between the application developer and the miner, right? And the miners, there's this emerging terminology, miner extractable value, where you're finding that miners can actually start to attack the smart contracts that are running on top, because there's arbitrary smart contracts and there isn't necessarily a tight link between the two. You sort of have this adversarial forces at play. And sometimes you have things happen where the Ethereum blockchain upgrades, and that will impact negatively some smart contracts, right? And so they're sort of out of luck. They have to just roll with the punches, right? The rising price of Ether and the rising congestion on the Ethereum blockchain causes scalability issues, right? So every contract suffers the same way. Even if you're a low volume contract, even if you don't yourself need a lot of throughput, because you're on the Ethereum blockchain, it's one pipe, you get clogged, right? So the idea with Cosmos was look, instead of having one blockchain that can do everything, let's have many blockchains and each one can do one thing, right? And that way we can experiment more with different kinds of virtual machines, different kinds of cryptography, different kinds of applications. We can have small blockchains that are, local to a particular city maybe, or a province, or a whole country. We could also try having large blockchains that are going to be global. We could run the Ethereum virtual machine if we want on one of these blockchains and see what happens, right? So the idea was to really, you could think about it like, you could think of Ethereum, this sort of world computer vision of Ethereum as like a single mainframe vision, as if in the development of computing systems, someone tried to say all of the world's computing is going to happen on a single mainframe that lives in an IBM, data center somewhere. And that's that. And no one will have their own devices. No one needs their own devices. It just runs on a mainframe, right? That's sort of the story with Ethereum. It's a single device, single computer, world computer. And obviously that's not how the world played out with computing and with the internet. Obviously now we all have our own devices. We have cell phones and laptops and so on. And each of them are sort of unique. You can choose, the user of the device can choose what applications they install, what operating system, and they can all still talk to each other, right? So the user is sovereign over the device, but the devices are all interoperable. And that's what we wanted to bring to blockchains, right? Because you think about a blockchain, essentially it's a logical computer. Each blockchain is like a single computer. It happens to run on many physical computers, but effectively it's a single machine. And we know there's going to be many of them. So we want to enable that. We want to enable the user communities for those blockchains to own them, to take responsibility for them, to upgrade them on their own schedule and according to their own values. But we still want them to all be interoperable, right? And so all of the Cosmos development philosophy is sort of grounded in those two key principles of sovereignty and interoperability. And all of the software we built was designed to be incredibly modular so that we would impose as few opinions on the developers and on the communities using it as possible, right? And so we have the Tendermint layer, which is this sort of low-level consensus thing. Then we have the Cosmos SDK layer, which is a framework for building applications. And then we have IBC, which is another layer for interoperability, and so on. And so the idea is, okay, now you're going to have a proliferation of blockchains. Now what? Well, all those blockchains are going to be interoperating with each other. They're going to be communicating, right? But now you might be facing this problem where if a blockchain wants to communicate with 10 other blockchains, it needs 10 connections to 10 other blockchains, right? And so you end up, with n squared connections because they all have to have pairwise. It's like shaking hands with every person in the room, right? It takes up a lot of time and energy and it's wasteful. And so the idea behind the Cosmos architecture was, okay, what if some of the blockchains will take on a sort of privileged position in this topology of many blockchains out there, and they will serve as sort of hubs and will sort of promote a hub and spoke design so that we'll have certain blockchains that aim to be hubs and specialize in being hubs that many other blockchains will connect to, right? So instead of having direct pairwise connections, many chains will connect to the hub and then the hub will be able to route them. But the key thing is that we don't force the hub on anyone, right? It's not a forced topology. So it's up to, it's up to competition in the market for the different blockchains to compete to be the best hub. And many blockchains are going to say, oh, I'm not trying to be a hub. I'm trying to specialize in this technology or that technology. And others will say, well, I don't need all that fancy technology. I'm trying to specialize in being a hub and provide services for many chains to connect to me, right? And so the Cosmos Hub today, the blockchain that hosts the Atom token, that's really what it's trying to focus on being is an interchain service provider, right? Basically the best hub on the market that all the other chains will connect to route their messages through so that they can easily access anyone else in the network. You can think of it like the major airports, right? Whether the Atlanta airport or JFK or any of the sort of major hub airports that all the others connect through for connecting flights. That's sort of the idea behind the Cosmos Hub.
So yeah, that's great, Ethan. So you talked there about routing messages through the hub, which I guess kind of leads us on to what IBC is. Maybe, I guess kind of one question is, what is the point of this communication? What are these messages that are being routed between the different blockchains? What are they today and what do you foresee them being?
Yeah. So, the thing with blockchains today, and we saw this 5 years ago and it's still true today, is that they're siloed, right? So if you have data on one blockchain, or tokens, and tends to be tokens, assets of some kind, and you want to do something with them that is not accessible on that chain, maybe you want to trade them, maybe you want to use them to pay for something or whatever it might be, you want to use some fancy finance protocol, the main thing you can do right now is send them to a centralized exchange and trade them on there, or utilize whatever services are on there, right? So the main, the baseline use case for IBC was to actually be able to send tokens from one blockchain to another to access the functionality of that other chain, right? So you might imagine that you have, tokens on Ethereum, and you want access to some kind of cryptographic primitive that's not available on Ethereum. Maybe there's some kind of zero knowledge proof system or some other kind of cryptography. Maybe you're in a jurisdiction, maybe you're in China, and they have particular cryptographic standards they use and the Ethereum blockchain can't use them, but you have assets on Ethereum, you want to send them to another blockchain so that you can use the cryptography there, which you need for your business operations or whatever the case may be. So the idea about the initial use case of IBC is this sort of one-way transfer of tokens. It's not an atomic swap. It's not an exchange. You're not giving up your token for another, you're not doing a trade, right? You're actually unilaterally sending your token from one blockchain to another, and then you being able to use it on that other chain. And we could get into the mechanics of what that looks like sort of technologically, but that's sort of the first idea, the first use case of IBC is that token transfer one. And that's the one that we expect to go live on the 18th of February.
Yeah. Maybe that's kind of almost a nice way to then talk a little bit about what the kind of the purpose of the Atom token is. And what you said earlier, what I find fascinating actually about the Cosmos ecosystem is it's probably the only blockchain ecosystem where no one, people can use the Cosmos SDK, can use all the technology without like necessarily having to own the Atom.
Yeah.
But obviously, atoms are central to the Cosmos Hub, which you foresee as being like the major the kind of intersection of all of these different zones.
Yeah.
So yeah, can you talk a little bit about what the purpose of the Atom token is?
Yeah, for sure. So when Cosmos was initiated, we're in a very different world now than we were 5 years ago, right? And so we can talk about the original intention of the Atom, and we can talk about maybe where the Atom is going. So the original intention was for it to be a staking token, right? At some level, it was one of the first, Tezos came a little bit before, but it was actually, one of the first real staking tokens that had delegation, and it had one of the most advanced proof of stake systems where everything happened in protocol, right? So anyone could delegate atoms to validators to determine their voting power in the network, and they would earn rewards, and those rewards were earned within protocol sort of automatically, right? And so Cosmos pioneered a lot of that. And the idea with the Atom is that it's the sort of foundational collateral in the system, right? That you need the token to actually secure the network, to put it up as a bond, to guarantee the good behavior of the validators, to guarantee that they'll be truthful, that they won't misbehave, and that they'll be available and online to continue processing transactions. And furthermore, you need the Atom to actually control the network, to vote on governance, right? So the Cosmos Hub has an on-chain governance mechanism where you can vote on proposals to change parameters, inflation parameters, or to upgrade the network, or to spend funds from the community pool. There's a pool of assets that sort of collects as like a little tax that can be spent on development or whatever, right? And so all that governance is controlled by the Atom. So it's a voting token, it's a staking token, and it's also a fee token because you need it to pay fees for transactions. There's no smart contracts there, so there isn't sort of quite the same notion of gas for operations in a complex smart contract, but there are fees, and right now you have to pay the fees in atoms because there are no other tokens, right? So it sort of had all those use cases, but primarily it was a staking token, right? Just to actually secure the network. So that's where we've been for the last little while. But we're moving into a world where the Cosmos Hub is going to be this router, this sort of, we like to think that it's like a port city, right? Like a gateway into the rest of the world, the thing that everything will connect through, right? And in port cities, you have a proliferation of types of money, right? There's not just one type of money. People will come bringing their gold coins or their silver coins from all over the world, and you have to be able to trade them, right? And so once that happens, surely the validators, even though they still need atoms to stake on the Cosmos Hub, and the atoms will be the underlying collateral that secures all the activity, people will be able to pay fees in any token, right? And so, people often see that and they say, oh, so what do you need atoms for? You don't actually need atoms to use the Cosmos interchain. On the one hand, they think, okay, well, that's a problem for the Atom value proposition. We'll address that in a second. On the other hand, it means we don't coerce people, right? It means we make the technology and the infrastructure as available as possible for anyone to use, and there's sort of no coercion, which will lead directly to improved user experience and to better adoption and so on, right? But so what does that mean for the Atom if you don't actually need it to transact on the network? Well, you still need it to stake on the network, to control the network, to have a say in it, right? In how it will evolve, how it will upgrade, and to earn fees from the economic activity of the network, right? So all those fees that are flowing through from the many different tokens that are coming, they're all paying fees, and those fees accrue to the staked Atom holders who are actually putting their atoms at risk to secure the activity of the network, right? So it's still important in that regard. But a lot of features are coming to the Cosmos Hub over the next couple of years. We're sort of working on this complex network of entities that are working together on this project. We have been laying out a new roadmap for sort of the next 5 years of the Cosmos Hub, right? In the last 5 years, we sort of set the stage, industry leading proof of stake blockchain network. The next 5 years, we aim to be industry leading interchain network, right? Bring this port city to life. And so we're going to need a lot of features there. We're going to need an automated market maker, like a decentralized exchange. We're going to need a name registry for registering different chains and for routing between them. We're going to need features like shared security that will allow the atoms that are staked on the hub to actually secure the deployment of many other blockchains, right? So that even though we always want to prioritize sovereignty and for people to put up their own blockchains and take responsibility for their own validator set, we also want to make it easy for people to put up a validator set so that they don't have to find their own. They can actually leverage the collateral of the Cosmos Hub, the security of the Cosmos Hub, to launch their own chain. And so atoms will secure those, and obviously you'll need atoms to be able to do that. And then those chains will pay even more fees into the Atom token. So a whole host of new functionality will be coming to the Cosmos Hub over the next few years to secure its role as sort of a key port city in this interchain, not through coercion, not by forcing anyone, but just by demonstrating that it is like the highest place with the most utility to actually do commerce in the interchain and prioritizing those sort of interchain needs.
Yeah, okay, that was a good introduction to the tech. Let's look into the competitive landscape. There's obviously one major competitor out there called Polkadot, and ironically, one of our former analysts, Dieter, is now working with Polkadot, with the Polkadot team, and another one of our analysts has just joined the Cosmos team. In your opinion, who of both has a better career outlook, and what makes better than Polkadot?
Well, look, I mean, on the one hand, Polkadot raised a lot more money than Cosmos. On the other, there seems to be a lot more entities in the Cosmos ecosystem, right? Yeah. So take from that what you will. I mean, the reality of this, I don't really like to think of us as competing with each other, because what we're all competing with is the legacy financial system, right? Which is much larger than all of us. And as we're all sort of growing the ecosystem together, there is a lot of room for a lot of players right now. Yeah, and the space we're working in is such a vast, high dimensional landscape of different engineering options. Every project is sort of exploring its own trade-offs in that high dimensional landscape, right? And there's no correct answer. There's no right or wrong. There's different priorities, right? And you might say, okay, well, I'm going to go down this path, and I'm going to go down this path, and I'll go down that path. And, we'll see you down the road, because there's a lot to explore here. And none of us know what's right. In Cosmos, we've chosen these two key values of sovereignty and interoperability. We want to make sure that user groups, user communities can put up their own validator sets, their own networks, and that those things can still interoperate with one another without having, to subject themselves to the rule of some sort of, kingdom-like network, right? And so even though there is this sort of Cosmos hub in the Cosmos ecosystem, and that we expect it to play a pivotal role, it's not forced on anyone. It's not coerced. It's going to have to compete on the same terms as everyone else to prove itself. And we expect it'll be able to compete because it has the whole key development team behind it, and a lot of people are aligned behind the atoms and so on, but it's not forced on anyone, right? And so that those key values of sovereignty and interoperability are sort of, the trade-off space we've chosen in this landscape. Polkadot, Avalanche, whoever, they've all chosen something else, right? And those are totally valid.
So what can Cosmos do that Polkadot can't, and the other way around? What is Polkadot doing that perhaps is not implemented on Cosmos?
I mean, I think we're working towards common ends, right? And we sort of, I think both always said, like, if we each build the internet of blockchains and they don't talk to each other, then we both fail, right? Yeah. And we're actually actively working on interoperability between the two systems through IBC.
Yeah.
And so, ultimately, I think they will both be able to do quite a lot in the long run of what the other can do. And, maybe there'll be some kind of merger, who knows what the future has in store. But the focus is very different. In Polkadot, you when you build a parachain, you have to take your security from the relay chain, right? You have to pay dots for this auction to bid for slots, and there's only a limited number of them. And so there's this sort of competitive market for parachain slots. And then you're sort of under the rule, let's say, of dots, of the dot token as a governance and staking token, right? And then you can interoperate with everyone else who is part of that dot ecosystem, right? In the Cosmos world, it's a little bit different. We don't have that necessarily tight sort of shared security where everyone's getting security from the same place. So on the one hand, that's good because it means everyone can get the security that they need. So if they need lower security, then they don't have to spend more. They don't have to bid for a slot. They can just recruit a validator set from their local jurisdiction or from wherever, from their community, and run their chain. And they can still interoperate with anyone else, right? You don't require any kind of economic alignment to interoperate. It's just, you just have to use the same protocol standard, right? I mean, you could think of it sort of like the internet in the way that any computer that connects to the internet can talk to each other. You don't have to have, a Google account to connect your two internets together. You have to have a Google account to send Gmail email, right? But anyone can use email. It doesn't have to be Gmail. It can be a million other things, right? So there's sort of that interoperability protocol. Now, if you're not using Gmail, you don't have Google Docs, you don't have, the other things that come with it, but maybe you don't want that, you don't need that, you don't want to pay for it, and so on, right? So that's where the sort of sovereignty shows up in that kind of distinction. Now, at the same time, that means that not all Cosmos blockchains have that same high level of security that you might get in the Polkadot ecosystem, right? Where all the chains are sort of forced to leverage security from the same place, which means they all share in the same security that DOTs offer, right? Whereas in Cosmos, each chain brings its own security. But we've seen a number of Cosmos-based blockchains have all grown to, multi-$100 million market caps or billion-dollar market caps. There's a few of them now. And as well, because we've built IBC to be such a general purpose protocol that you can build arbitrary applications on top, you can actually build, like I was saying before, shared security on top of IBC. So that using IBC, we actually can, if chains want to leverage their security from the Cosmos hub, they can do so, right? So they can have sovereignty if they want it, but they can also have the security from the Cosmos hub if they want it, but in a more opt-in way.
Yeah, so I fully agree. In a way, I often describe it as the holy grail of blockchain, right? Once it's fully implemented, that's the ultimate goal. Let's move to use cases. The Binance Chain and Terra, who are obviously both super reputable companies and teams, are both building on the Cosmos SDK. Do you anticipate DeFi becoming a key use case for Cosmos in the future as well? And are you seeing other use cases outside of the DeFi space that work on the Cosmos SDK?
I was seeing other use cases. They all claim to be DeFi now. Because that's the buzz. That's what everyone wants to be in DeFi. No, I'm only kind of kidding. I mean, yeah, of course, DeFi is huge. At some level, it's sort of a killer app right now, and it's sort of taking the world by storm because we've unlocked these new primitives for decentralized exchange, for lending protocols, and so on that make it very, very accessible to access financial services that previously were inaccessible, right? And that's obviously there's good reason that people are so excited about that, and we'll continue to see Cosmos be a home for a lot more innovation in DeFi in ways that you can't necessarily do on Ethereum because of the gas prices, because of the limits of solidity. We will see a lot of experimentation. So like you mentioned, we have Binance, we have Terra, there's also Kava, we have folks like Akash, many others, Crypto.com, many others experimenting here. We also have smart contract platforms being built out on Cosmos, the Cosmwasm platform, the Agoric platform. Those are also launching their own chains. We'll probably see them, sometime this year. And each of those bring their own sort of unique flavor to what you can build with DeFi, with these, composable financial Legos, people like to call them, right? So DeFi will obviously play a big role in Cosmos right now. In the long term, I mean, we have yet to see what the long-term world of international economics and finance looks like. I have my own vision for that. We could talk about that a little bit. I personally think money is actually the killer app. It's less about finance and more about reinventing money and making money a lot more local. We've gotten so used to operating with sort of the USD as the global reserve currency and sort of the single thing that everyone thinks about, or at least at a nation state level. I use CAD, or in Switzerland, you use the franc. What I would like to see, and the world I think we're moving towards, is actually more local currencies, maybe even at a municipal level, but not in a way that competes with the national currency, but actually forms a substrate for the natural currency that sort of builds up to the national currency, right? So that you might have your Toronto coin, your Montreal coin, your Vancouver coin, and they sort of compose together into the Canadian dollar. And I think we can actually use the new mechanics of DeFi, bonding curves and automated market makers and so on, to actually build that up in a way that will make for much more robust national and local economies that are less prone to crises and sort of more sustainable and more self-sufficient than what we have today. So that's sort of, really the future I'm working towards, and I think Cosmos will play a big role in.
Do you not think that gets very confusing very quickly if I go from Toronto to Montreal and all of a sudden I have to deal with a different type of currency with a different exchange rate? like in my mind, it's almost like the opposite. Like, surely you want a single global currency.
I don't think so. Yeah, so there's definitely a UX element, but I think the, Uniswap has showed us how easy it can be to swap coins, right? You have people using that now. They don't even know what's going on behind the scenes. All they know is they're turning their ETH into something else, and they don't know how it was done, but it's done very quickly, right? So I would expect the same thing would happen. If you're in Toronto, you would probably hold some reserve of Canada coin, right? Or if you don't, it would be very easy to move from Toronto coin up to Canada coin, over to Montreal coin, in the flash of a button. You wouldn't have to go out to the bank and take out your Montreal coins and worry about that. Yes, there would be different prices, but I think that's actually very important. I think we have been, there is this convenience of a global currency, and everyone thinks this sort of obvious that we should have one global currency. I think that's a lie, because I don't think it accounts for the actual ecological reality, which is that you can't price everything over the whole world in the same denomination, because the world is too heterogeneous, and value is not denominated in a single dimension. Value is highly multidimensional, right? And
okay, so thinking a little bit about this concept of a global digital currency, could it be Bitcoin? And if so, would Bitcoin be able to interact with Cosmos in any way, or would it always be entirely separate?
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm a secret closet Bitcoin maximalist, but I've said that on so many recorded videos now that it's obviously not a secret anymore. A lot of people have seen Cosmos, and including the founders, as like a secret way, a secret ploy to scale Bitcoin and to scale Ethereum. And so absolutely, there's a world where these things work together. I do see Bitcoin as sort of a global reserve currency. That doesn't mean that you should buy your apples from the market in Bitcoin, the same way you didn't buy your apples from the market in gold. You bought them using banknotes once banknotes were available, right? And so in the same sense, I think we'll have a sort of hierarchy of money, and things like Bitcoin and maybe some of the national currencies will be at the top. Maybe atoms will be up there. I don't know. That'd be nice. But I think we will see a sort of hierarchy where you'll be able to step down into more regional, more local, more grounded currencies. And so there's a lot of work already underway. There's actually a few different projects working on bridging Cosmos to Bitcoin a few different ways. We're not sure exactly when that will come to production, maybe later this year, maybe next year. But it'd be really great. We definitely see Cosmos as a way to bring new functionality to Bitcoin or to any other chain. That's sort of the key with interoperability, right? You can take your assets from one chain, use them with functionality on another.
Okay, that's an exciting future outlook of Cosmos. Well, thank you so much for this introduction, and we now have 15 minutes roughly left for a Q&A session. If you're up for that,
I'm up for it.
Perfect. So this now to our investors. There's a button at the bottom of your screen, a Q&A button where you can click and submit your question. Just go for it, submit one by one. We will read them out and just discuss it, I would say. Let's start with the first. I see questions coming in.
You want me to read them out, or are you going to read them out?
I can read them out, or Charlie, why don't you read them out?
Sure. So, okay, first one. It's interesting that Terra, based out of South Korea, is running on Cosmos. Is Asia a big part of your strategy?
Oh, absolutely. There are a lot of key projects, key contributors in Asia. Terra is obviously a big one. Crypto.com is out there. IrisNet by Bianji in China. They're now part of the China BSN. So that's really exciting. We have BHarvest in Korea. They're one of the top validators on the Cosmos network. They've actually become a key contributor as well. So they're working on the automated market maker for the Cosmos Hub that we hope to see live sometime in the next few months. That will bring a lot more value and functionality to the Cosmos Hub, new features for Atom. Right now tokens can be transferred, but once there's an exchange on the Cosmos Hub, then we'll start to see liquidity, huge amounts of liquidity flow in and tokens actually be able to trade there. There's also Forbol, which is another major player. I believe they're in Hong Kong. They're a big validator. They're building their own sort of social media, decentralized social media network on Cosmos. So Asia's awesome. A lot of awesome stuff happening there, except the time zones don't overlap. So I never get to talk to these fine people. So yeah.
Just a quick add-on from me. Was that an intentional part of the strategy, or has that just been a natural thing that's happened?
Yeah, I mean, it was intentional that it would happen naturally. I mean, yeah, it is. So the relationship with Iris, for instance, with Bianji goes way back. We pursued that early on, and we certainly made efforts to spend some time in Asia. Back in 2016, we spent some time in Korea. We were in Shanghai for the Ethereum DevCon, and we've been nurturing the communities in Asia for sure. Certainly, we could do more there, and we'd love to do more there. But the whole idea with Cosmos again was that the technology would be so useful and accessible that people would just find it and start adopting it, and that's what we've seen more than anything.
Great. Yeah. Okay. Next question. Polkadot has a much higher market cap than Cosmos. Why is this? What have they done right, or what has Cosmos done wrong?
I mean, all right, let's go with the easy answer, which is that Cosmos raised at the beginning of 2017, before the ICO bubble. So we raised $17 million because we set a cap after selling out in 30 minutes. Polkadot raised in the later half of 2017. I think they raised around 10 times more than us, and they're worth a little less than 10 times more than us. So
that's actually a really good point. So at the time when the Cosmos ICO happened, and indeed you capped it at, I believe, $17 million, it sold out in 28 minutes, and this were like phenomenal at the time. It was unheard of in the largest ICO and the fastest selling out ICO ever to think of. So at the time, it was really before this big crypto craze of 2017, which was a phenomenal achievement. So I'm with you. It was probably a timing thing, and today
yes,
a result.
So I expect the Polkadot fundraiser, the Cosmos fundraiser, there were only like 1,000 addresses that participated because it sold out so quickly. We didn't know what to expect. That was,
I also sometimes have the impression that, but I may be wrong on that Polkadot is simply doing more marketing and Cosmos is just more tech-driven. But that, of course,
true. I mean, their fundraiser was larger. They had a lot more participants. Seems like maybe there's more marketing as well. So, yeah, I mean, okay. I try not to pay too much attention to the price. Prices aren't that great a signal. I mean, Ripple is still in the top, and Dogecoin is up there again now. Like, make what you will of the prices. We're trying to bring real value. That's what I'm saying, right? Value isn't denominated in USD. Remember,
all you need is Elon Musk to just write.
Exactly. Yeah. Dogecoin always is a good example, right, of how
exactly.
Great. Okay. So next question. Do you think the markets are too hot right now, or is there much more upside for these assets? How big could this space be?
Look, I'm not a professional investor or investment advisor. The markets do seem hot, but at the same time, all the central banks are printing trillions of dollars. So no one knows how to value assets anymore. We saw this craziness with GameStop. We see craziness with Tesla. Who knows? People are looking for returns. They could very easily be too hot. But the crypto markets are what? $1 trillion? That's nothing in the scheme of things, right? So we all expect they're going to 10x, if not 100x. When is that going to happen? How is it going to be distributed? I can't pretend to know.
And we are still at a stage, right, before most of these technologies are really adopted. So it's from a technology standpoint at a really early stage. So
very early. Yeah.
All right. Next question. Does Cosmos have any identity solutions attached to it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few efforts in the work. There is a decentralized ID, a DID effort underway to sort of match the DID standards. You can find that, I believe, in the Cosmos ICS repository, but you'll probably hear a lot more about that over the next months as the development gets fleshed out there. There's also been some interesting work on more private credentials, on using cryptography and selective disclosure and things like this. So there's a lot of development there. We haven't talked too much about it because it's still kind of nascent, but I think we'll expect to see it a lot more over the course of the year for sure. Yeah.
Maybe just taking that question a bit further, we've talked a lot about like money and DeFi, but I wonder, like, are there things you're excited about that are non-DeFi or like, like other applications that people aren't really talking about?
I mean, the main thing I'm excited about is mutual credit systems. So, and this is sort of what I'm talking about in terms of like local money, is enabling local communities of people who have goods and services to offer to trade with each other using a medium of exchange that they're able to issue, right? Yeah. To basically lend to each other to be able to do business without having to have access to liquidity from the financial markets, the larger financial markets necessarily. So whether you consider that finance, not really, I consider it more sort of economics, fundamental economics. I think that's really important. There are a lot of other interesting applications, things like mesh networks and being able, like more cooperative organizational things. So being able to put up like co-op ISPs. There's the Althea network, which is using Cosmos. There's the Regen network, which is doing more like carbon credits. They just had this big announcement. Microsoft is buying carbon credits from them. And, you know, they've been a huge contributor to the Cosmos ecosystem. So that's really exciting to see. Again, that might be considered finance, but we're very interested in sort of cooperatives as a type of organizational structure and what the Cosmos technology can do to enable cooperative organizations, credit unions, and so on to actually scale more and to, you know, empower more smaller, local, you know, marginalized or underprivileged communities. Yeah.
That's great. All right. Okay, next question. After the launch, what single metric can we watch to see if Cosmos is being used and developing well?
I would guess number of connections to other blockchains and the throughput over those connections, right? So if you start seeing a lot of tokens flowing in and a lot of transaction volume, that would be really interesting. I mean, there's going to be a lot more upgrades this year, probably after Stargate, after the 18th, where there'll be other metrics you can watch. Once there's a market maker on the hub, you can look at the total value lock there, like the liquidity available. But right now it'll be about the connections, and other chains are still going to have to upgrade before they can connect. So they may not be there on day one, but they'll be coming for sure.
Yeah.
So this really is on-chain analysis, right? It is visible to everyone. It is public. It is no secret really, and how the adoption plays out. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Good. I think we have arrived at the last question.
Well, so I've got a question, Ethan, which is something I've been pushing for a little bit, which is that, you know, the Cosmos Hub itself is basically a DAO. So, you know, for those that on the call that don't know what that is, you know, so it's basically a decentralized autonomous organization where everyone with atoms who is staking can vote or can propose things to the hub and can then vote on the outcome of the proposals. Now, the Interchain Foundation, you know, is an entity, is a not-for-profit entity, and one thing I was wondering is whether the Cosmos Hub itself should be represented in the Interchain Foundation in some form, and the form that I would propose is you have a single person who basically represents the Cosmos Hub, is paid by the Cosmos Hub to go to board meetings and basically represent the network itself.
Yeah.
What do we think about that?
I love it. I mean, it's something we'd definitely like to see. I think it will take some time to get there. You know, we're still working on internal organization and improving transparency in our processes at the Interchain Foundation, and things have been getting, you know, it's a slow process, but we constantly improve. We have our, you know, we're busy with development, but we're working on these organizational aspects as well. So I definitely expect to see something like that happen in the near term, and a lot more experimentation in governance, in open source funding, in community pool management, and so on. So we actually saw, I mean, you know, speaking of marketing, there was a recent proposal on the Cosmos Hub that was basically saying, you guys aren't doing enough marketing. Let's spend some funds from the Cosmos Hub community pool to a few people that will go out and do a bunch of marketing. So, you know, we'll see what kind of impact that has, and we'll definitely see a lot more interesting governance experiments. And again, you can only participate in that if you have atoms, if those atoms are staked, so they're at risk, they're working to secure the hub, that gives you a stake in the network and in the governance. And, you know, these governance staking tokens, they're important because they help drive the direction these things go, right? And they all have a bright future ahead of them. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, so where, just to wrap it off, where can people learn more about Cosmos? If someone is interested, perhaps developers, perhaps non-developers, perhaps like just generally, where's the go-to place to learn about Cosmos?
Cosmos.network.
Perfect. All right.
And follow us on Twitter at Cosmos.
And follow, okay. We obviously do. And okay, perfect. So thank you so much. This was a great session, and thank you for the introduction to Cosmos, for sharing about the outlook. Charlie, do you want to?
Thanks so much, Ethan. You know, as I've said before, you know, I think this is definitely one of the most interesting projects in the space. I love all the work you guys are doing around governance and around just you know, pushing the ecosystem forward in kind of new and innovative ways. And yeah, you know, we've been supporters for a while, and I think we will continue to support.
Sounds great. Well, thanks so much, guys. Appreciate the support. What's that?
Do you have a final word, Ethan? Anything to say towards our investors or us, perhaps, or just out into the world?
I mean, thanks a lot. We have a lot more to build. So, keep following and let us know what you think. Cosmos is here to serve you. So yeah.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Great. Thanks.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Al.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks.